Today we are going to be making a fall tree painting. So you will be getting a very long piece of paper that will be going on a large placemat. You want your paper facing horizontally, so it looks like one big thick horizontal line. So the first thing you need to do is write your name and your room number. So K-O, and then I will let you know what number to write. Once you have your name and your room number, flip it over to the blank side, and then you're going to be getting a brown Sharpie marker from me once I see your name is on the back. So once you have this brown Sharpie marker, you are going to be drawing out some vertical and diagonal lines. So I am going to fill my paper with some vertical lines, and then I'm going to go back in and add some diagonal lines that are going upward, like a letter V. So these are going to be branches on our trees. So I'm going to go ahead and draw out all of my trees, my vertical lines and diagonal lines. So you can see I have my trees about a couple finger spaces apart. So I can fit about 3 fingers between each. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You will want somewhere between 8 or 12. So it just depends on how closely you space them out. You don't want them all to be over here. So when you make a line, you want to give yourself a little space. Put 3 fingers down and make your next line so that you can space them so that they're not so far apart or too close together. So now I'm going to go ahead and add my diagonal lines that face up, but I am going to leave about a hand space that's completely blank. I'm not going to put any branches in this area. So think about where you need to put your branches. For some of my shorter trees, they're just going to have a couple branches up at the top. Some of my taller trees will have some more branches. Now, if you want to, you can go back through and add a few extra lines that are just small on your diagonal lines, just making an extra diagonal line to add more of branch marks. You do not have to do this, but if you have some time where you're waiting for your paint, you may do this. Do not go overboard, meaning do not make so many lines. Just a few to make these look like bare trees that have no leaves on them, excuse me. They have branches but no leaves. So once you are finished with all of your branches, you should have this space where there's no branches. Now, about 4 finger spaces, that's where we're going to keep completely blank when we start to paint our trees. We want to make sure that we paint up at the top, and we don't want to get too close to the bottom at first. So we just want to try to keep that in mind. Make sure that you have all of your branches finished. We've got our nice vertical lines and our diagonal lines all facing up. Remember, like a letter V, facing up, pointing up towards the sky. So we don't want any broken branches. Nice tall branches. It might look a little funny, but once we put the paint on, it will really start to make sense. So make sure we cap those Sharpies. We have to be extra careful. These are permanent markers, so we don't want to get this on our clothing. It does wash out of skin, but please be careful with them. So before I go to paint my actual leaves, I am going to watercolor paint. So we're going to paint this entire paper so it becomes a blue. So you're going to dip your brush, and remember, dip it, wipe it on the cup, and then you're going to paint right across your paper. So you're going to paint this whole paper back and forth, edge to edge, so there are no white spaces. So when you're finished with painting your paper, it should be all blue. Notice how that brown Sharpie still is nice and brown and it hasn't gone anywhere. It's a permanent marker. That's why it's important we use those Sharpies. When you're finished with your blue paint, you can go ahead and just rest your brush inside that little pie pan. Just be careful that this doesn't tip over. This is good watercolor paint, so we don't want to waste that. So once you're finished with that, this dries pretty quickly. We can start to work on our leaves. So we're going to be painting just this top part of our paper, making sure that we have some free space where we see nothing but blue sky. So I'm going to be giving out pie pans that have 3 fall leaf colors. Some yellow, some orange, and some red. You'll want to start with the lightest color and work your way to the darkest. So yellow first, then orange, and then red. So I am going to just get the very edge of my sponge with the yellow paint. And you're going to paint in an up-down motion. So we're not painting like this is a paintbrush, or else I would have given you a paintbrush. I'm giving you a sponge. So we want to dab up and down so we get that leafy texture. So I'm going to just pick a few trees that I want to have yellow and kind of space them out, leave some room for some orange and some red. Notice I'm going kind of in an oval shape. So it's longer, more narrow this way, but still kind of rounded. So I'm trying to make an oval shape with that color. Notice how you can still see my branches peeking through, and that's why we drew them, so that's a good thing. Okay, now that I've done all the yellow that I want for my trees, I want to go ahead and put some yellow leaves down underneath the trees like they've fallen off onto the ground, because we want to make this look like the ground, and right now it looks like the sky. So to make this look like the ground, we're going to cover underneath with lots of yellow underneath our yellow trees for the leaves. Now I don't want to get up too high. If I cover all of this, it's just going to look like this is one big tree and that it has no trunk. So we want to make sure that we keep a nice space in between our leaves that are on the trees and our leaves on the ground. I should be able to come around and just glide a finger all the way across my paper and not get any of this yellow, orange, or red paint on my finger because you have left some space. So I am going to add some of this yellow paint at the very bottom underneath my trees. So notice how I'm going up and down and up and down and up and down, giving that a nice leafy texture. Now that I'm all done with my yellow, you don't even have to worry about wiping off the sponge. You can go into the next color, which is orange. Notice how you see a little bit less branches with the orange, and that's okay. You still see them kind of peeking through, just like we would a regular tree. And don't worry if these colors mix together. Like I might get some yellow oranges from the yellow mixing with the orange. It's kind of nice when those colors mix. So I painted another orange here, and I'm going to mix that in with some red to make a red orange too. Going in with my last color of red. out, I haven't gone the whole way to the top each time. Some trees go to the very top, but some of my shorter trees don't, and that makes it a little bit more interesting. Notice how I can still run my finger through and not get any red, yellow, or orange paint on my finger. So I'm going to finish off by adding some red leaves at the bottom. Don't be afraid to get to the edges. That's why we have our placemats. So now my painting is finished and it can go on the drying rack where it will dry, and we will see them again soon. When you're finished with your sponge, you can just go right back inside of the pan. Please make sure the sponges stay on the clothespins.